Thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Could you introduce yourself to the Informs members?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Jeff Day. I am a principal consultant in pre-sales for FICO. So FICO, the financial services company, FICO, the software company. I support the software platform. So my background is optimization, PhD from Georgia Tech in operations research in 2002, and been with FICO now for almost 3 years. I've been in healthcare, been in transportation, worked at GE, worked at SAS. So there's been several different companies. I think all of them are heavily involved in Informs. And my first introduction to Informs was as a grad student,
Okay.
probably in the late 1990s.
Oh, wow.
And so started coming to conferences, like most students, presenting my work, and have been a member off and on, so probably, 25 years now?
Wow. Okay, great. We're happy to have you here. So tell us how you got started in the analytics field.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So when I was in undergrad, I was working full-time in retail. So I was working at TJ Maxx, taking night classes, trying to figure out what I wanted to major in. And my job was I was responsible for the back room, what we call receiving. So clothes come in, we get them out of the boxes, put them on the right hangers, make sure the sizes, the tags are correct, and everything, and get it out. So I was in charge of that responsibility. And then TJ Maxx had a corporate-wide effort to improve the receiving function. And so they wanted to set new benchmarks for performance on how many boxes per hour or whatever metric. And they hired a bunch of industrial engineers. And the industrial engineers came in, they said, this is how you should hang clothes. This is the right way to do it. And what was interesting was my store was beating the new metrics, and we were exempt from the retraining
Oh.
because we were already doing better. And then I realized, and I said, okay, well, let me look at what I make, and let's look at what they're making. I could probably do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's what led me to pursue industrial engineering.
Okay.
Went to Georgia Tech, so I grew up in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, so it was in my backyard. And then when I was in school, I had a couple professors who taught optimization. So in operations research, like an honors operations research within the Georgia Tech program. And the two professors, one of them was George Nemhauser, who's a very big name in the
Yes.
field. And so when George Nemhauser says, maybe you should consider getting a PhD, you consider getting a
Yeah,
PhD.
absolutely.
And when I realized that he and Gary Parker, who was the head of the graduate program, were two of my 3 letters of recommendation, I didn't feel the need to apply anywhere else. So I just stayed at Georgia Tech and pursued the PhD in operations research.
Great. That's a great story of how you got started. So how would you explain your current role to someone outside of this community? What you do at FICO?
Yeah, so normally if people ask, I used to say mathematical optimization and try to do the tap dance around what that means.
Right.
And so the thing that people relate to is, I would say, look, there's a popular vacation destination in Orlando, Florida, and I built the real-time optimization engine that they use to schedule their buses. So when you tell people that particular use case, they get it. They're like, okay, you're smart, I get it, and that's enough. It sounds like you do cool stuff. Now when people ask, I say I'm in software technical pre-sales. So because it's not just optimization, so we support decision rules, AI, ML, the platform in general. So instead of trying to go down the mathematical route, I tend to go down the software route and just say I'm in technical sales, I do sales support. Generally, once you say FICO, like 1 of 2 things happens when you say FICO. The most common is people say, how do I improve my score?
Right, yep.
And you say, pay your bills.
Yeah.
The other one, which I didn't expect, but has happened at least once, is somebody says, oh, you're FICA, you take money out of my paycheck every time. And I say, we are not Social Security, we're not FICA.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy that takes money out of your paycheck. But no, I've learned to just say software sales. If people press, then we have the conversation.
Yeah.
But at least people feel like I get it.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So would you say the work that you do saves lives, saves money, or solves problems, and why?
Yeah, so now, like, I would say saves money, solves problems, right? So if you look at the history of FICO is all credit scores, fraud, all kinds of applications outside of that, but it's business focused. So we do have some healthcare, but it's not the predominant business. My last job, I used to work for UNC Health.
Okay.
So I spent 2 years in healthcare, doing things like, how do you balance the load across physicians so that to ease physician burnout? So instead of one guy having a whole bunch of really hard patients and somebody else is very easy. So that's something where you start to look back and say, I'm saving lives, I'm helping a hospital, I'm preventing physicians from burning out, helping them give better care. So that was very rewarding. I think now we're more in the business world,
Yeah.
and that means solving problems and saving money.
Do you still find it rewarding?
I do. It's good to see the use cases as they come out, and it's interesting. Right now is an interesting time because of the development of platforms, and to see the shift from the way we used to work 20 years ago when I started, and everything was difficult, and everything was a leap of faith. Everything was like, I'm going to build this and hope I can find somebody that'll implement it. To now, everything's point, click, drop, drag, connected. The possibilities to me is what's exciting.
Yeah.
And thinking about like, wow, if I had this 20 years ago, what we could have done.
Yeah.
And it's exciting for the new people. So I think the people coming into the field now, I'm going to show my age, but we're going to have that. Like, we used to have to optimize uphill both ways when I was a kid, and now everything's handed to you, and you're still unhappy. But it is nice to see that, like, where the field has come.
Yeah.
And to still be at the edge of that and see where it's going.
Okay. Do you have any advice for the people coming into the field that have everything at their fingertips that you didn't have 20 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, so the best advice I got, so when I interned between undergrad and grad school, I had a boss, and he's just like, people are always worried about, like, do I get my master's, do I get my PhD, do I do this, do I do this? What do I put on my resume? And he just said, he's like, look, wherever you go, just add value. And he's like, as long as you add value, they'll want you to hang around.
Yeah.
And if you can show that you added value, other people will want you to come work for them. And it was like the most simple, straightforward thing. But whenever I see people like stressing out about stuff, it's just like, look, how do you add value?
Yeah.
If you're good at, I know how I add value, and I know what people want, and I can find that Venn diagram where they intersect, then you'll be successful.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Is there anything about your career or your career path that might surprise anyone?
I think the Disney story, for most people, like, they don't think about that.
Yeah.
I think what most people would know if you look at my resume is I've been in a few different places, and it's the kind of thing where things happen, and so it's like I feel like when I graduated, I felt like I was going to be the guy that, like, would be at one place for 20 years, and then I'm on my 6th job now in 21 years, so that was a little surprising. Okay. I think the other thing was there was a point where I was a manager. I was a people manager when I worked at SAS for a while, and I think I was headed one way, and then I realized I didn't enjoy it as much as I liked, as I thought I would. And so it's like, if I had to lead people, I'd lead people. If that's what you need to do, so if that's what's needed from me, but that's not like the drive.
Yeah. If you made it to the first keynote, I know Hillary touched on this, the terminology used in this industry, right? So first was OR, then analytics and data science. Now AI is the hottest thing. What do you think is the next buzzword to watch out for?
What I'm hearing a lot about is quantum computing.
Okay.
And so quantum analytics. I know some of the big Google, Microsoft. I know Booz Allen has a big quantum computing lab. I met somebody like literally at a bar like 2 years ago, but she's like, she works for a nonprofit that takes at-risk youth and teaches them quantum computing specifically in order to get them good jobs to try to break social cycles. And so to me, when they say this is how we're investing in youth from a societal perspective, they have to have some confidence that this is going to be big and there's going to be demand for those jobs.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to see what happens with quantum optimization, quantum ML.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about it to say we're 5 years, 10 years away,
Right.
but that's where the talk seems to be.
Okay. Was she an Informs member by any chance?
No, this was literally somebody that lived near me.
Yeah.
And I was getting
That's
dinner,
random, huh?
and you start talking to somebody,
Right.
and you're like, what do you do? I was like,
Yeah.
optimization or something like that. What do you do? Oh, I help inner city youth with learn quantum computing.
Cool.
You're like, wow, you win.
So in Atlanta then?
No, this is
Or-
in North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Very cool. So you've been an Informs member for
A long
several
time.
decades.
Yes.
What's been your favorite Informs experience?
So my favorite was I used to help run the Informs Professional Colloquium.
Oh, yes.
So that was a Sunday event. I think it's the Young Researchers Connection, or there's still an
Early
event.
Career Professionals
Early
Network.
career, yes. They've morphed the branding, but I was first involved the second year they did it, and I did about 10 of them. So I was always part of the organizing committee, and it's a lot of work up front. But you come in, you spend all day with students. They're super enthusiastic. There's companies that pledge funding and you help them travel so they could come to the analytics conference. So before that, there weren't a lot of students at the spring conference. It was mostly professionals and people out.
Right.
So getting students to come, spending all day with them, and then you stay in touch. And then the next year, a lot of the students would come back and be part of the committee because they enjoyed it so much, they wanted to give back. And then you run into them years later and they'll be like, hey, that thing you told me 3 years ago, it happened last week. And it made so much more sense now. One guy, he's like, man, I was like, I'm in this meeting and it's like, that's what Jeff was trying to say.
That's awesome.
So that was like the highlight. Like
Yeah.
I said, I did 10 of those.
Yeah. Have you thought about signing up for the Informs Mentor Match program?
I did. I just talked to Jill Capello
Okay, yeah.
like last week. So I had somebody last year.
Oh, you did?
Well, I had somebody and then he canceled before our first meeting.
Aw.
And I never reached back out to say, did you mean to cancel? Did you mean to cancel that meeting or you just don't ever want to talk to me? Like I didn't clarify. So she asked and I was like, if you got somebody, send them my way. It's fine.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. You're also an Informs Roundtable representative. So
Good.
can you just describe the Roundtable briefly and your role as a representative, what the benefits are for you of being a part of the Roundtable?
Yeah, I mean, so it was put together when Informs was still largely academic. And so it's now 40 something companies. One of the roles is to provide Informs advice from the practice world. So for me as a member, I'm the FICO representative. It's really how I see what's happening in the field outside of my customers. So I talk to customers about point solutions. I talk to customers about software. I don't see trends. I don't see hiring trends. I don't see, is it chief product officer or chief technology officer? Or I don't get to see all of that at work unless I do a lot of outside reading. But the roundtable, those discussions, I get a lot out of it. And it's stuff I can take back to my company and say, hey, here's something that I saw or I heard. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
So I like it. I think it's socially, I mean, they're great people. Just purely from a social perspective, it's interesting. People with very wide variety of jobs, but it's a lot of really good industry information that I don't get anywhere else.
What do you think is the best way for a new Informs member to get involved with the community?
So things we've talked about, the Mentee program, the young professional connection.
Early career professionals network. You'll get it.
So I think beyond that, the local chapters, anything that's industry specific, so healthcare, et cetera. I think I would assume they're always looking for volunteers. I think that coming to conferences, and I've had like probably the last, this calendar year, 4 or 5 people that just send me LinkedIn invites and like, hey, I go to Georgia Tech. I know you went to Georgia Tech. Can I ask you about your career path or your journey, or are you going to be at Informs? Can we meet? The other thing I think is good is they used to do the resume review.
Yes.
And so I would do some of those. I think even if you're only 1 or 2 years out, sign up for it, because even if they don't need you that year, they have your name. And you make the connections.
That's great advice. Thank you. Tell us about your endeavor at Bravest Face.
Bravest Face.
Yes, I want to hear about this.
Yeah, so this is an interesting plot twist. Bravest Face, there's a song by the band Rush, which is my favorite song. So I'm a prog rock, I'm a drummer, so I'm a prog rock guy. And it says, there's no, in the whole wide world, there's no magical place. You might as well rise and put on your bravest face. So it's just about being your truest self and doing what you have to do in whatever circumstances. So there was all of my hobbies are performance creative things. So my work's very technical. So I've been playing drums for a long time. I used to do improv theater. I've done stand-up comedy. So that's how I relax, is everything that's as low tech as possible. And when I was doing improv, there was a system in North Carolina where you're either at a theater in Raleigh or you're at a theater in Chapel Hill by UNC, and you can't cross-pollinate and you can't attend each other's classes. And I was on a team and I'm just like, I want to perform. So I just started renting out theaters and putting on shows and recruiting teams from wherever. And then I just built an LLC just to have it. So it's kind of like if it's profitable, it's a business. If it's not, it's a tax write-off as a hobby. I did all this production of theater, of improv, of comedy, of developing musical acts and stuff, all under the Bravest Face name. And so when I stopped doing that, about 3 years ago, I got very interested in autism advocacy. So I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 38, so late in life. and had some struggles at work and said, hey, I want to try to put some effort into this. So I kind of rebranded. I still use Bravest Face. It still applies.
Yeah.
But when I do advocacy work, if I get speaking engagements, I'm on the Duke University Center for Autism Community Engagement Board. So all of that money filters in through that LLC just for tax purposes and for having a brand and having some protection, legal protection. But it really is, it's all still about just being your authentic self and finding what you enjoy and having the courage to do it.
That's great. I have so many questions.
I'm sure.
Okay. So you said you're a drummer
Yeah.
and you work at FICO now, but you said you've only been there for a couple years.
For 3 years, yes.
3 years, because did you know that there was like a FICO band?
Yeah, was it here?
The
Balaporia? And yes, I've heard of them.
So you haven't been recruited into
I have not
yet?
been recruited.
Okay. Do they know you play the drums?
I think the person that knows I plays the drums left.
Okay. If you could have dinner with one famous person from history, who would it be?
Yeah, all of them. Can't we just invite
everybody?
everybody?
You just want a big party.
No, yeah. So it's weird. My instinct is people who challenge society. So like a Martin Luther protesting the Catholic Church, and Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in baseball, Joan of Arc talking to angels and leading a revolution. But then if I really sit down and who would I enjoy talking to? I think Richard Feynman, the physicist who was part of the Manhattan Project. Discovered why the space shuttle blew up, the O-rings. So because you have all this book knowledge, it's like, okay, what is the person like, and how do they compare in person to the way they write or the way people write about him? Yeah. And I think he's recent enough that it's not like this sociological experiment of what was life like? Right. What was ancient Egypt like?
What would you ask him?
I think a lot of it, I think if I was starting it, it would just be like, was this true? Was this true? Because he has a lot of stories that could be tall tales. I think after that, it's the way he thinks and the way he talks about education and it's like, how do you explain things that you're passionate about to people that don't get it, that people don't want to get it? Because so much of, even analytics is still just getting people to believe you and trust you. And that's where I feel like somebody who was such a good educator and such a good lecturer and such a good speaker, what can you learn about that you can apply? Yeah. So it's no longer like this curiosity thing. It's like, how do I convince people and talk to people and influence people the way you do as somebody that's coming from a highly technical field? Yeah.
Thank you. So what do you like to do for fun? What does a typical weekend look like for you?
Weekends unstructured, unplanned. Good. So I'm definitely not the, 8 o'clock I'm going to be here. It's that a lot of it's catching up on stuff around the house. Like anybody, you have laundry, you have grocery trips, etc. I just bought a place last year, so there's still some of that final, what goes where. And then I'm currently, so we're talking on the autism thing. So I'm pursuing a thread of advocacy around trying to get organizations and particularly the state of North Carolina as a government, as an employer, to require ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, certification for HR for people who request accommodations. So I'm writing up my experiences. I'm working with an editor. I have some contacts in the advocacy field. So I try to save up and on the weekends get some writing done. Because I've been in situations where it's like, if you just follow the law, because it's very clear how things are supposed to be done, if you just follow the law, this would have gone a lot better. And so the fact that people don't have that information is something I feel like for all people with disabilities, any kind of invisible or otherwise, is important. So that's kind of where the passion lies. So if it's a passion project on the weekend, it's probably pursuing that thread and writing and rewriting and researching legal precedents, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Good luck with that.
Yes. Less fun than drumming.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Do that on the side. Okay. Do you have any stand-up you could do for us?
Any?
That a short bit.
Did
you do any math stuff?
Not math. So I did. So the Duke Autism Center paid me to do stand-up for 10 minutes to open their annual Christmas party in 2020. Okay. So it was the first Zoom. They had a Zoom party. Oh. Right. And so it's Zoom and it's autism. So my opening line is, you get on Zoom and you got all these people and you say, it's wonderful to see all your smiling faces and not have to worry about eye contact. Yeah. and that was like the icebreaker for like their whole Christmas party.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, unfortunately, like a lot of what I do are stories.
Mhm.
So I'll talk, like if I talk about autism, I'll say like I tell people, like I'm autistic. And they go, I had no idea. If you didn't say anything, I wouldn't have known. So for somebody who has like learns things socially through replicating,
Mhm.
you go, oh, that's the right way to respond. So then you're at a restaurant and the manager comes up and he says, hey, I hope everything is going good. I want you to make sure you understand that the customer satisfaction is our highest priority. And I go, well, if you hadn't said anything, it never would have occurred to me. Then suddenly I'm the jerk. So it's finding that kind of
Yeah.
humor, more than like one-liners.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
That's all I have today. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Yes. Thank you.